Hello and welcome. I am Gimba Umar. Tonight, President Muhammadu Buhari asked ECOWAS leaders not to relent in efforts at stamping out terrorism, called for common ground to defeat the monster completely. Ogun Governorship Election Petition Tribunal dismisses APM's petition challenging Governor Dakpo Abiodun's victory, says the petition is lazy and deficient. Bandits killed 6 persons in fresh attacks on Fadama Rimi community in Chukun local government area of Kaduna State. And African leaders bid farewell to former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe as country holds state funeral in his honor.
On Business News tonight, African Development Bank floats $2 billion global benchmark bond maturing September 2022.
On Sports News tonight, Nigeria faces 5-time world champions Brazil, Portugal and Oman in Group D of the 2019 Beach Soccer World Cup.
And then the incessant killings and act of terrorism in the West African sub-region seems to be a major cause of worry to ECOWAS leaders, and they have been discussing ways to end the scourge. President Muhammadu Buhari wants ECOWAS heads of state and government to confront and stamp out terrorism in the region. The president mentioned this today at the extraordinary summit of the Authority of ECOWAS heads of state and governments on counter-terrorism in Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso, where he asked the leaders not to allow terrorism destabilize the region. According to President Buhari, the frequency of attacks, the determination and resilience of terrorist groups, as well as the ease with which they raise funds and acquire sophisticated weapons, are matters of serious concern, which should engage our attention as a community. Equally worrisome is the continuing spread of the menace of terrorism in the region and the growing link between terrorism and organized crime. This is why we must not relent in our efforts until we defeat the monster completely. He also brought the regional leaders up to speed with the situation in the Lake Chad Basin, noting that the area has become an abode for terrorist groups and extremists. President Buhari, however, gave an assurance that achievements of the multinational joint task force, the MNJTF, in confronting the menace remains an exemplary model of regional collaboration. The president says that he expects that the adoption of the recommendation of the Ouagadougou summit, if properly implemented, would go a long way towards eliminating the terrorists. President Buhari and the other West African leaders were joined at the summit by the leaders of Chad and Mauritania. Meanwhile, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, has eulogized former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe, saying that he stood out as a leader because of his zeal, passion and selfless commitment to the emancipation of the people of Zimbabwe. Professor Osinbajo made this observation in Harare, the Zimbabwean capital, where he joined other African leaders to attend the funeral of Mr. Mugabe. He describes the ex-Zimbabwean leader as not only a great encouragement to the independent movements everywhere, but more to the self-realization of black people. The Vice President added that there is a lot to learn from what he describes as Mugabe's incredibly illustrious career, and that his passing is indeed sad. The Minister of Power, Saleh Mumbung, and Minister of State for Power, Gidi Agba, have been inspecting power stations and other power projects across the country to get first-hand information on the progress and challenges clogging the wheel of electricity supply. The minister's latest port of call is the Kaduna Power Station, where they gave the assurance that there would be tremendous improvement in the supply of electricity. It was also an opportunity for them to end the blame game between the Transmission Company of Nigeria, the TCN, and the Kaduna State Electricity Distribution Company over power supply.
The new Ministers of Power on an inspection tour of electricity facilities and other ongoing projects in Kaduna State. Among the facilities inspected are the 330 kV transmission station in Mando and the 215 megawatts Kudenda power plant, which is about 85% completed. All they want is first-hand information on the progress made and the supply situation. Surprisingly, There's already a raging argument between the TCN and the Kaduna Electricity Distribution Company over a drop in the supply of electricity. The TCN claims the distribution company has failed to invest in modern infrastructure to reduce power loss, a claim the management of the DISCO refuted.
There is no voltage problem in Kaduna. Kaduna is not up to 200 kilometers from Shiroro. So any place that is not far from a generation station cannot have voltage problem. The place we have voltage problem is Kano. And even Kano, they are not complaining like Kaduna. So what they need to do, and you need to tell them, is that they need to build their network. They need to build rebuild their network.
In Kaduna, we are supposed to get at least a minimum of 350 a day, but we don't get up to that. I mean, if we really want to go into the nitty-gritty of the problems, I mean, if you talk to generation, they will also tell you that actually their problem is with transmission.
Amidst the blame game, the ministers believe that the successful completion of the power plants in Kudenda will boost power supply in the northern region, even as they assure Nigerians of speedy completion of all other ongoing power projects across the country.
Everything is going fine at the moment. We just want to encourage the contractors to hasten up and finish the project, and that is our mission of coming out to inspect. And by the time this 3 top and this is 8, it is completed, we're going to power Kaduna, Kano, and Jos at the same time, thinking we are going to get uninterrupted.
The ministers say they will continue the inspection in other power stations across the country to ascertain the level of improvement, hear the complaint of stakeholders, and work towards increasing electricity supply in line with the task given them by the president.
The International Labour Organization ILO is advocating the need to invest in skills acquisition centres for migrants in order to cushion the effects of irregular migration in Africa. The ILO Regional Director, Mrs. Cynthia Olajuwon, explains that such investment will help to protect the rights of migrant workers in their host countries or as returnees in their country of origin.
Irregular migration has become a major issue of public interest in Africa. Political leaders and international organizations are seeking ways to reduce the negative effects. According to the United Nations, an estimated 41 million people have migrated globally in the last 2 decades, while 19 million of that number represents African migrants within the continent. 17 million African migrants were resident outside the continent. Some who engage in such exercise do not possess the relevant skills that will provide them employment in their host country. Part of efforts to bridge this gap is the reason why the International Labour Organization and its development partners are holding this workshop in Abuja.
And that objective is to invest in skills development and facilitate mutual recognition of skills, qualifications, and competencies. And the second part of that objective is important because even within ECOWAS, there are still gaps in recognition of skills, recognition of certificates.
Skills are the best asset for people to thrive, contribute to their society, and achieve their career aspirations. Without skills, enterprises cannot function.
We have affirmed that fair migration and responsive governance are some of the ways to tame the hazards of migration, poverty, inequality, and given that fair migration is critical to a better society, we are committed to today's workshop.
While highlighting government efforts at providing skills for returning migrants in Nigeria, the Ministry of Labour and Employment is soliciting the support of the international community.
These consultations will enable our countries to assess our potentials to benefit from skills partnership for fairer migration. And to this end, I think exchange of information on institutional framework is very, very important.
The United Nations 2017 report on Africa's international migration notes that political instability and economic hardship are the major reasons for most migration from Africa. Arguably, therefore, the first step towards solving the problem of irregular migration is to address the continent's economic and political issues.
In the meantime, the Northeast Development Commission is seeking collaboration with the Bauchi State government on developing an operational plan in rebuilding the insurgency-ravaged region and also improve the lives of internally displaced persons in its communities. Chairman of the commission, retired Major General Paul Tafa, led his team to the state on a mission to feel the pulse of the victims and their immediate demands. He was received by Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State. The delegation also met with some of the internally displaced persons seeking refuge in the state. Our correspondent Hajjara Aliu reports.
Makarahuta is one out of many communities in Bauchi State that host internally displaced persons, and these IDPs have since integrated with residents. The Northeast Development Commission, led by its chairman, retired Major General Paul Tarfa, is meeting with the IDPs to know their plights and what their immediate needs are.
We want the government to provide a skills acquisition center for us and teach us vocations that will make us self-reliant.
Bauchi State boasts of being the safest in the Northeast region, and as a result, it provides a safe haven for IDPs. In a bid to improve the living standards of these IDPs, the state government organizes a session to show the commission the peculiar case of Bauchi being host and its impact on the state resources.
We have high rates of illiteracy, we have high rates of poverty, and then the influx of the IDPs and the instability in the whole sub-region had only exacerbated the problem. And youth restiveness because of lack of employment. Government is the largest employer of labor, which is part of what this administration is trying to tackle, try to create alternative means of employment for young people.
The team is also paying a courtesy visit on the governor of the state, who says he is concerned about the future of the displaced persons.
We don't even get multilateral assistance because we are not the theater of war, but we are carrying the brunt on us. I want you to do justice to us. We cannot drive these people away. And we are only getting from the Federation account.
The Commission's chairman reiterates his commitment to partnering with the state government to make things better.
We are keen and ready to key into your plan, which will be integrated into the Commission's master plan. The Commission will soon engage your government, Your Excellency, on all operational issues towards creating symbiotic relationship.
This commitment to Bauchi State will also be felt by other states in the Northeast whose people are either victims of insurgency or those taking refuge with their neighbors. Hajjara Aliu, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, we'll look at the role of micro, small and medium enterprises in addressing unemployment in Nigeria. And we'll be joined by the former chairman of the National Association of Small-Scale Industrialists in Nigeria, Mr. Segun Kuti George. Stay with us.